Time has been moving in an incredibly strange way these last few months and weeks. It's hard to sometimes even remember what day of the month or even day of the week it is. And yet, for the last 7 weeks, we've had a special Jewish barometer, our nightly count of the Omer, as we count for 49 days from Pesach leading up all the way till today, till Shavuos. And this daily count has helped put things in perspective and has, at least for myself, helped me focus a little bit during this strange reality that we're living in. And when it comes to the Omer, we know that it is of central importance to make sure not to miss even a single night of counting. But there's actually an interesting halachic situation, which, by the way, in our time period living in COVID is sadly a little bit more theoretic than practical. And that's what someone has to do when they travel overseas, and in particular, across the international date line during Sfira. For instance, what happens when you travel to Australia during the Omer? Flying out west, you lose a day. And so therefore, if you leave the United States, when counting, let's say, the 14th day of the Omer, you'll arrive in Australia approximately a day later, and at night, they'll be accounting the 16th day of the Omer. So do you count according to the location that you came from? In which case you'd either be ahead or behind. Do you repeat a day or totally miss the day and therefore can no longer continue to count the Omer with a bracha? And if you count differently from where you are, what does that mean with regards to other things like the observance of Shavuos? In other words, if you count based on where you came from, then you're now a day behind when you arrive in the West. And if you need 49 days of the Omer, is Shavuos then going to be 1 day later than everybody else? And while there are a number of different opinions on this matter, I want to share with you one opinion that I think is so innovative and so radical that no one else actually shares it, and that's the opinion of the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zichrono Livracha. And according to the Rebbe, you actually continue counting the way that you did before the trip. In other words, if you last davened in the evening Mariv, and that was the 42nd night of the Omer, then tonight you'll count the 43rd, even if everybody else is now counting the 44th. And the Rebbe held that every person has to count a full 50 days personally, and they need to observe Shavuos on what would be their 50th day. In other words, if you travel east, the Rebbe held that you observe Shavuos a full day earlier than everybody else, and if you travel west, you would observe Shavuos a full day later. And the Rebbe's opinion is actually based on two important ideas. The first being the Gemara Menachos, in which we learn that the mitzvah of counting the Omer is uniquely obligatory on each and every person. And in addition, we find that the Torah actually never explicitly tells us what date Shavuot falls on. Rather, all we know is that it is celebrated 50 days, or rather 7 full weeks following the starting of the conclusion of the first day of Pesach. And while this opinion is certainly fascinating, maybe a little academic, I think there's a deeper underlying theme that all of us who have not traveled internationally in these last few weeks can actually learn a great deal from and about. Shavuos represents the culmination of a 49 period of preparation, a holiday we will work up to until we are finally ready to renew our commitment to the Torah. And the way that each of us prepares and the way that we commit to Torah, that is actually a very individual thing. It can't be something we do just because everybody else is doing. We can't just sit back complacently reassuring that Kabbalat HaTorah, the acceptance of the yoke of the Torah, that it's just happening as a community, and so therefore we're exempt from renewing our own commitment. The truth is that we each need to take it upon ourselves and find our own personal and unique path and connection to the Torah. It means finding a subject that you're interested in learning more about. It means asking questions, challenging ourselves, taking ourselves out of our comfort zones. But that personal journey is what preparing to receive the Torah is all about, and perhaps why the Lubavitcher Rebbe says what he says. But the challenge is that sometimes when we make a personal connection, we start to think that the Torah, that it's ours alone. That the connection that we make maybe is more important, that it's more right than our fellow. We look at those around us, we see them as being different from ourselves. Maybe they're more, or maybe they're less observant than me. They don't study as much Torah as I do, or maybe they do. And the challenge of making the Torah personal is also remembering that God gave the Torah to our entire people and not to any one single person. That we all share the same Torah, but perhaps are maybe coming at it from different perspectives. And so we need to engage with each other in healthy dialogue and not point accusatory fingers. We need to respect the choices that others make and see and appreciate the good in them without assuming the worst. And the challenge of the Omer and counting towards Shavuos is not just about making our own connections to the Torah then. It's about making a personal connection to the Torah that doesn't come at the expense of our connection with others. It's seeing the Torah as something that is uniquely and personally ours, yet something that is shared and loved amongst our extended family and our community. And so this is a lesson, I think, of the Rebbe's view on counting the Omer while traveling. Our direction and success as individuals and as a community defined by Torah. It lies in our willingness to engage in its study, to lovingly share it with others, to immerse ourselves in its sacred texts, and to find areas in it that give us delight that we can use to travel with us wherever it is that we might go. And while we might not be traveling across the international date line these days, may this journey in Torah take us far this year. May it give us the strength not only today for Shavuos, but in the many days that lie ahead. And so Orit and Shaya and Nava and Noam, they join me in wishing you and your family a Chag Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom.